Marcus Sterling stood at the huge glass window of his office on the 47th floor. The city looked small from up there. Cars moved like tiny ants on the streets below. He was 32 years old and had already built his own successful technology company, but there was something bigger he wanted. Something that belonged to his father. His father owned a massive shipping business worth $3 billion. Ships that carried goods all around the world, warehouses in every major city, thousands of employees. It was an empire that Marcus had dreamed of controlling since he was a child. But there was one big problem. His father had made a rule that it seemed impossible to follow. The old man believed that Marcus was too cold and selfish to run the family business properly. He thought his son cared only about money and power, but knew nothing about real human feelings. So he put a condition in his will. Marcus could only inherit the shipping company if he got married before his 33rd birthday. The wedding had to happen in less than 6 months. Marcus had tried dating many women from rich families, society ladies who wore expensive jewelry and went to fancy parties. But every single one of them wanted a real marriage with love and romance and children. They wanted him to change his whole life for them. They expected him to spend time talking about feelings and going on romantic trips. Marcus did not have time for any of that nonsense. He treated everything in his life like a business deal. They've made lists of pros and cons before making any decision. He scheduled his days down to the minute. He even chose his clothes based on what would make the best impression in meetings. Love was just a word that made people do stupid things and waste their money. But now he needed a wife fast. Not a real wife with real feelings, just someone who could play the part convincingly. Someone who would stand next to him at social events and make his father believe that Marcus had learned to care about another person. Someone who would not expect him to actually fall in love. Marcus spent weeks thinking about his problem. He interviewed several women through dating apps and social events, but they all wanted too much from him. They asked questions about his feelings and his plans for their future together. They talked about having babies and buying houses and growing old together. It made Marcus feel trapped and annoyed. One rainy Tuesday morning, Marcus decided to grab coffee from a small diner near his office building. He usually went to expensive coffee shops with fancy names and high prices, but he was running late for a meeting and the diner was the closest place available. The moment he walked inside, he knew it was not his kind of place. The diner looked old and worn out. The floors were scratched and faded. The booths had tape holding the seats together. The smell of bacon grease hung heavy in the air. Fluorescent lights flickered overhead, making everything look harsh and uninviting. Most of the customers were construction workers and office clerks eating cheap breakfasts before work. Marcus almost turned around and left, but he really needed caffeine and did not have time to find another place. He sat down in an empty booth near the back and pulled out his phone to check his emails. He was hoping to get his coffee quickly and leave without talking to anyone. That was when he first saw her. The waitress moved between the tables with smooth, practiced movements. She carried plates of food on both arms and never seemed to drop anything. Her uniform was old and faded but clean and neat. Her name tag said Emma in simple black letters. She looked tired but still managed to smile at every customer. When Emma came to his table, Marcus expected her to just take his order and walk away. Most service workers were intimidated by his expensive suit and serious expression. But Emma was different. She poured his coffee without being asked and noticed that he looked stressed. "About something? You look like you have had a rough morning," she said with genuine concern in her voice. "The apple pie here is not very good, but sometimes comfort food helps when we are feeling overwhelmed." Marcus was surprised that she had noticed his mood. Most people were too afraid of him to make personal comments. Business associates only talked to him about work and profits. Even his own family members kept their conversations brief and formal. But this waitress seemed to actually care about how he was feeling. Over the next few weeks, Marcus found himself returning to the diner more often than necessary. He told himself it was just convenient since it was close to his office. But the truth was that he enjoyed talking to Emma during her brief visits to his table. She never asked about his job or his money. She treated him like a normal person, instead of a wealthy businessman. Emma shared small details about her life during their conversations. She was 26 years old and worked 3 different jobs to pay her bills. Her grandmother was sick with diabetes and needed expensive medical care. Emma dreamed of opening her own small bakery someday but could barely afford rent on her tiny apartment. Marcus learned that Emma got up at 5 in the morning to work at a grocery store before coming to the diner. After the diner closed, she went to her 3rd job cleaning office buildings late at night. She only got about 4 hours of sleep each day but never complained about being tired. She just kept working and hoping that things would get better somehow. What impressed Marcus most about Emma was her kindness to difficult customers. One morning, an angry businessman yelled at her because his eggs were too cold. Instead of getting upset, Emma apologized sincerely and brought him a fresh hot breakfast, without charging extra. She even gave him a free slice of toast to make up for the inconvenience. Another time, an elderly woman could not afford to pay for her full meal. Emma quietly covered the difference with her own tip money. She did it so smoothly that the woman never realized what had happened. Marcus watched these interactions with growing fascination. He had never met anyone who was so naturally generous and caring towards strangers. Emma never tried to impress Marcus or get his attention in obvious ways. She did not wear extra makeup or flirt with him like other women did. She just treated him with the same warm friendliness that she showed to everyone else. To her, he was simply another customer who liked his coffee black and rarely smiled. One Tuesday morning, as Marcus sat in his usual booth watching Emma handle a rush of breakfast customers, something clicked in his mind. She was perfect for his plan. She was attractive enough that people would believe he had chosen her as his wife. She was kind enough that his father would approve of her. Most importantly, she clearly needed money desperately. Marcus could offer Emma a business arrangement that would solve both of their problems. She could use the money to pay for her grandmother's medical bills and maybe even start her dream bakery. He would get a wife who would help him inherit his father's company. It seemed like the perfect solution to both of their difficulties. That evening, Marcus stayed at the diner until it was almost closing time. He watched Emma clean tables and count her tips and prepare to end another long, difficult day. His heart was beating faster than usual as he prepared to make his unusual proposal. He had negotiated billion-dollar business deals without feeling nervous, but somehow asking this waitress to marry him felt more frightening than any boardroom meeting he had ever attended. As Emma finished her closing duties and prepared to leave, Marcus knew that his whole future depended on what happened next. Would she think he was crazy for suggesting a fake marriage? Would she be insulted by his business-like approach to something as personal as marriage? Or would she be desperate enough to consider his unusual offer? He was about to find out. Emma finished wiping down the last table as the clock on the wall showed 9:30 at night. Her feet ached from standing all day and her back was sore from carrying heavy plates. She was ready to go home to her small apartment and maybe watch some television before falling asleep. But she noticed that Marcus was still sitting in his usual booth, even though the diner was officially closed. She walked over to his table with a friendly but tired smile. "We are closing up now," she said gently, "but you can finish your coffee if you need to." She started untying her apron and getting ready to leave. The diner felt different at night with most of the lights turned off. It was quieter and more peaceful than during the busy day. Marcus looked up at her with an expression she had never seen before. He seemed nervous, which was strange because he was always so confident and sure of himself. "Emma," he said in a voice that was softer than usual, "I have something important to ask you. Would you mind sitting down for a minute?" Emma slid into the booth across from him, feeling curious about what could be so important. She had never seen Marcus look uncertain about anything before. He was always calm and in control when he came to the diner, but tonight something was different about him. His hands were clasped tightly together on the table and he kept looking down at them instead of meeting her eyes. "This might sound completely crazy," Marcus began slowly, "but I need to get married." Emma blinked in surprise, wondering if she had heard him correctly. She waited for him to explain what he meant because the statement made no sense by itself. Marcus took a deep breath and continued talking in a rush of words. "My father owns a huge shipping company," he said. "It is worth billions of dollars and has been in our family for 50 years. But there is a condition in his will that says I can only inherit the business if I am married before my 33rd birthday. That gives me less than 6 months to find a wife and have a wedding." Emma listened with growing amazement as Marcus explained his situation. She had known he was wealthy from his expensive clothes and confident manner, but she had no idea he came from such a rich and powerful family. The whole story sounded like something from a movie or a romance novel. Marcus continued explaining his problem with the urgency of someone running out of time. He had tried dating women from his social circle, but none of them would agree to a simple business arrangement. They all wanted real love and romance and a genuine marriage. They expected him to change his whole personality and lifestyle to make them happy. "That is where you come in," Marcus said, looking directly at Emma for the first time since he started talking. "I am offering you a deal that would benefit both of us. A marriage contract for exactly 1 year. You would get $50,000 immediately to help with your grandmother's medical bills. Plus, I would pay you $5,000 every month during our marriage." Emma felt her heart start beating faster as she realized what Marcus was suggesting. He wanted to pay her to be his fake wife for a year. It was the most unusual and unexpected proposition she had ever heard in her life. She stared at him in shock, not knowing what to say or think about such an incredible offer. "After the year is over," Marcus continued, "we would get a quiet divorce. I would give you another $100,000 so you could start your bakery. You would never have to work 3 jobs again or worry about paying your bills. Your grandmother could get the best medical care available. All you would have to do is attend some social events with me and convince my father that we are truly married." The offer was so generous that Emma could barely believe it was real. She made about $20,000 a year working her 3 jobs and struggling to pay for basic necessities. Marcus was offering her more money than she could earn in 10 years of hard work. It would solve every financial problem she had ever faced in her entire life. But marriage was such a serious and important thing. Even a fake marriage felt enormous and life-changing. Emma had always dreamed of getting married for love someday. She wanted to find a man who would cherish her and build a real life together. She had never imagined that her first marriage would be a business transaction with a stranger. "Why me?" Emma asked quietly. "You could choose any woman you want. There must be plenty of beautiful rich women who would be happy to marry you." Marcus had prepared for this question, but when he looked into Emma's honest, trusting eyes, his practiced answer seemed wrong somehow. "Because you are real," he said simply. "Everyone else in my world wants something from me or tries to change me. They see my money and my status before they see me as a person. But you have always treated me like a normal human being. You never asked about my wealth or tried to impress me. You just served me coffee and made friendly conversation." Emma felt touched by his explanation, even though she was still confused and overwhelmed by the whole situation. She had never thought of herself as particularly special or different from other women. But apparently Marcus saw something in her that he valued enough to trust with his future inheritance. "There is something else," Marcus added hesitantly. "This arrangement would have to look real to everyone, including my father. We would need to live together in my apartment. We would attend parties and business dinners as a married couple. People would expect us to act like we care about each other, but it would all be pretend. Just good acting to fool everyone around us." Emma tried to imagine what it would be like to live with Marcus and pretend to be his loving wife. She would have to move out of her tiny apartment and into his wealthy world. She would need to learn how to behave at fancy parties and social events. She would have to convince his family and friends that their marriage was based on genuine love and affection. The whole idea seemed impossible and terrifying. Emma had never been good at lying or pretending to be someone she was not. How could she fool people who knew Marcus well into believing that he had fallen in love with a poor waitress? What if they saw through the act and exposed their fake marriage to his father? But then Emma thought about her grandmother lying in the hospital bed getting sicker every day. The medical bills were piling up faster than Emma could pay them. Her grandmother needed surgery and medications that cost thousands of dollars. Without proper treatment, she might not live much longer. This marriage deal could save her grandmother's life. Emma also thought about her dream of opening a bakery. She had been saving money for years but could only put aside a few dollars each month after paying for rent and food. At this rate, it would take her 20 years to save enough money to start her own business. Marcus was offering her the chance to make her dream come true in just 1 year. "I need some time to think about this," Emma said finally. "This is the biggest decision I have ever had to make in my life. I want to make sure I understand everything before I give you an answer." Marcus nodded and said he would wait for her decision, but he reminded her that time was running short and he needed to find a wife soon. As Emma walked home through the quiet city streets that night, her mind was spinning with possibilities and fears. The logical part of her brain knew that marrying a stranger was crazy and dangerous, but the desperate part of her heart recognized this as the miracle she had been praying for. Her grandmother could live and her dreams could come true. All she had to do was pretend to love a man for 1 year. But what if pretending became real? What if she actually fell in love with Marcus during their fake marriage? Would she be able to walk away after a year with her heart intact? Emma fell asleep that night with more questions than answers racing through her troubled mind. 3 days passed before Emma made her decision. She spent those days thinking about her grandmother, who was getting weaker in the hospital bed. The doctors said they needed to do expensive surgery soon or her condition would get much worse. Emma had been trying to save money for months, but she was nowhere close to having enough for the medical bills. She also thought about her dream bakery. Every night after work, she would sketch designs for her imaginary shop. She had notebooks filled with recipes she wanted to try and business plans she had written. But it all seemed impossible on her tiny salary from 3 different jobs. Marcus was offering her a chance to make it all real in just 1 year. On Friday evening, Emma returned to the diner after her shift. Marcus was waiting in his usual booth with a folder full of papers and a small velvet box sitting on the table. He looked up when she approached and she could see hope and worry mixed together in his eyes. Emma took a deep breath and sat down across from him. "My answer is yes," she said quietly. "I will marry you." Marcus felt relief wash over him like a wave. He had been worried that Emma would decide his offer was too strange or risky to accept, but here she was agreeing to help him solve his inheritance problem. He pushed the velvet box across the table toward her with hands that were slightly shaking. Inside the box was a beautiful diamond ring. It was not the biggest or most expensive ring Marcus could have bought, but it was elegant and classic. The diamond sparkled under the diner lights and looked perfect on Emma's slender finger. As Marcus slipped the ring onto her hand, he felt a strange electric feeling shoot up his arm. This was supposed to be just business, but something about the moment felt more significant than he expected. The marriage license and ceremony were arranged quickly. Marcus used his connections to speed up the paperwork and book the courthouse. For the following Tuesday, he hired 2 people to serve as witnesses since neither he nor Emma had family members they wanted to involve in their fake wedding. Emma bought a simple cream-colored dress from a discount store. It was not the wedding dress she had dreamed of as a little girl, but it was pretty and made her feel special. She did her own hair and makeup in the courthouse bathroom and tried not to think about how different this was from the romantic wedding she had always imagined. Marcus wore his best business suit and carried a small bouquet of white roses for Emma when he saw her walking toward him in the courthouse hallway. He was struck by how beautiful she looked. The simple dress suited her perfectly, and her nervous smile made his heart beat faster than usual. For a moment he almost forgot that this was all pretend. The ceremony was brief and businesslike. The judge read the standard vows and asked if they promised to love and honor each other. Emma's voice was steady as she said yes, but Marcus noticed that her hands were trembling slightly. When it was his turn to speak, he looked into her eyes and felt something shift inside his chest. "Do you, Marcus, take Emma to be your wife?" the judge asked. Marcus had practiced this moment in his mind, but when the time came, his voice sounded different than he expected. "I do," he said, and meant it more than he thought he would. The words felt heavy and important, even though he knew they were part of an act. When the judge told them to kiss, Emma and Marcus leaned toward each other awkwardly. The kiss was supposed to be quick and formal, but it lasted a few seconds longer than necessary. Emma's lips were soft and warm, and Marcus felt that same electric feeling he had experienced when putting the ring on her finger. They pulled apart quickly, both feeling confused by the unexpected moment of connection. Moving into Marcus's penthouse apartment was like entering a completely different world. Emma had never seen such luxury in her entire life. The walls were made of floor-to-ceiling windows that showed the whole city spread out below. The furniture was modern and expensive looking, but somehow cold and unwelcoming. Everything was perfectly arranged like a magazine photo. Marcus showed Emma to the guest bedroom that would be hers during their marriage. The room was bigger than her entire old apartment and had its own private bathroom with a bathtub the size of a small swimming pool. The bed was huge and covered with soft pillows and blankets that probably cost more than Emma made in a month. "We will maintain separate bedrooms for privacy," Marcus explained in a businesslike tone. "You can decorate this room however you like and buy whatever you need to feel comfortable." He handed her a credit card with her new married name printed on it. "Use this for anything you want," he said. "Clothes, food, personal items, whatever makes you happy." Emma felt overwhelmed by the luxury but also lonely in the huge empty space. She missed her tiny apartment with its familiar sounds and smells. She missed her old life even though it had been difficult and stressful. This apartment was beautiful, but it felt like a museum where she was afraid to touch anything. The first few days of living together were awkward and uncomfortable. Marcus left for work early in the morning and came home late at night. Emma spent her days exploring the apartment and trying to feel at home in the strange environment. She was afraid to cook in the perfect kitchen or sit on the expensive furniture. Everything felt too nice for someone like her. Marcus had arranged for Emma to quit all 3 of her jobs so she could focus on learning to be a wealthy man's wife. He hired a personal shopper to buy her appropriate clothes for the social events they would attend. He also hired an etiquette coach to teach her proper manners for fancy parties and business dinners. Learning to fit into Marcus's world was more difficult than Emma had expected. She had to practice walking in high heels and eating with multiple forks and spoons. She learned which topics were appropriate for conversation at different types of events. She studied the names and faces of important people in Marcus's business and social circles. But the hardest part was learning to act like a woman in love. Emma had to practice looking at Marcus with adoring eyes and touching his arm affectionately during conversations. She had to learn to laugh at his jokes and finish his sentences like couples who had been together for years. It all felt artificial and uncomfortable at first. Their first public appearance as a married couple was at Marcus's father's 70th birthday party. The event was held at the family estate, which was even grander than Marcus's apartment. Emma wore an elegant cocktail dress and jewelry that Marcus had bought for her. She felt like she was playing dress-up in someone else's life. Robert Sterling was Marcus's father and the owner of the Ship and Empire. He was a tall, stern man with silver hair and sharp eyes that seemed to see everything. Emma was nervous about meeting him because she knew he would be watching carefully to see if their marriage was real. If he suspected they were faking, he might change his will and leave the business to someone else. But something unexpected happened when Emma met Robert. Instead of being intimidating, he was actually kind and interested in getting to know her. He asked about her background and her dreams for the future. Emma found herself telling him honest stories about her grandmother and her hope to open a bakery someday. She forgot to be nervous and just talked to him like a normal person. Robert seemed genuinely pleased with his son's choice of wife. He told Marcus privately that Emma was refreshing and real compared to the other women Marcus had dated. "She has a good heart," he said. "She will be good for you." Marcus felt proud hearing his father praise Emma, even though he reminded himself that it was all an act. As the evening progressed, Emma proved herself capable of handling the social situation better than Marcus had expected. She was polite to everyone she met and showed genuine interest in their stories. When one rude woman made comments about Emma's humble background, Emma responded with such grace and humor that even the critic was impressed by the end of the night. Emma had charmed nearly everyone at the party. Marcus watched her interact with his family and friends and felt surprised by how natural she seemed in his world. She was not pretending to be someone else. She was just being herself, and people loved her for it. For the first time, Marcus wondered if he had chosen better than he realized. Living together in the penthouse apartment began to create small moments that neither Marcus nor Emma had planned for. Every morning Emma would wake up early and make coffee for both of them. She would hum quietly while moving around the kitchen, wearing one of Marcus's old college t-shirts that she had found in the closet. Her hair would fall in soft waves around her shoulders and she looked peaceful and beautiful in the morning light. Marcus usually grabbed coffee on his way to work and ate breakfast at business meetings, but he found himself staying longer at home just to watch Emma's morning routine. She would read the news on her phone while sipping her coffee and sometimes laugh at funny stories. The sound of her laughter filled the quiet apartment with warmth that Marcus had never noticed was missing from his life. Emma started leaving small touches of herself throughout the apartment. She bought plants for the windowsills and books for the coffee table. She left her reading glasses on the kitchen counter and her favorite blanket on the couch. The sterile apartment slowly began to feel more like a real home, where people actually lived instead of just a fancy hotel room. In the evenings, Emma would cook dinner even though Marcus had told her it was not necessary. She said she enjoyed cooking and always made too much food for one person anyway. Marcus found himself coming home from work earlier than usual just to share these meals with her. Their conversations during dinner gradually moved beyond polite small talk to real discussions about their thoughts and opinions. Emma had strong feelings about many topics that surprised Marcus. She cared deeply about social issues and environmental problems. She had thoughtful opinions about art and politics and business practices. She challenged some of Marcus's assumptions about the world and made him think about things in new ways. He began to value her perspective and look forward to hearing what she thought about current events. One evening, Emma received a frightening phone call from the hospital. Her grandmother's condition had suddenly gotten much worse, and she needed emergency surgery right away. Emma dropped the phone and started crying with fear and worry. She had been so focused on her new life with Marcus that she had not been visiting the hospital as often as usual. Marcus found Emma sobbing in the kitchen, and something inside his chest broke at the sight of her tears. Without thinking about their business arrangement or the boundaries they had established, he pulled her into his arms. He held her tightly and stroked her hair while she cried against his chest. The embrace felt natural and right, even though it was not part of their contract. Marcus drove Emma to the hospital that night and stayed. In the waiting room during the long surgery, he brought her coffee and sandwiches and sat quietly beside her when she was too worried to talk. Emma was grateful for his steady presence during the most frightening night of her life. She had expected to face this crisis alone, but Marcus was there supporting her without being asked. The surgery was successful and Emma's grandmother began to recover slowly. Marcus insisted on hiring the best private nurses and doctors to care for her. He claimed it was part of their original agreement, but Emma could see the genuine concern in his eyes. He was not just fulfilling a business obligation. He truly cared about her grandmother's health and Emma's happiness. This crisis brought them closer together in ways their marriage contract had never outlined. Emma saw that Marcus was capable of real kindness and compassion when someone he cared about was in trouble. Marcus discovered that Emma's pain affected him more deeply than he had thought possible. He wanted to protect her from worry and sadness, even though those feelings were not part of their deal. Their public appearances as a married couple became more natural as they grew comfortable with each other. At charity events and business dinners, they moved together with easy familiarity that did not feel entirely fake anymore. Marcus would place his hand on Emma's waist when introducing her to new people. Emma would straighten his tie or brush imaginary lint from his jacket without thinking about it. Other couples began commenting on how happy Marcus and Emma seemed together. Business associates who had known Marcus for years said that marriage appeared to be good for him. He smiled more often and seemed genuinely interested in Emma's thoughts and opinions during conversations. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable to people who knew him well. Marcus's friends noticed that he talked about Emma even when she was not present. He would mention something funny she had said or ask for advice about gifts he wanted to buy for her. He seemed proud of her accomplishments and protective of her feelings. These were not the behaviors of a man in a fake marriage, but rather a man who genuinely cared about his wife. But with growing closeness came growing confusion about the boundaries of their arrangement. Late-night conversations on the couch began to feel like real dates. Shared glances across crowded rooms at parties carried more meaning than they should have. The tension between them became increasingly difficult to ignore, even though neither wanted to admit what was happening. Emma found herself wondering what it would be like if their marriage was real instead of pretend. She caught herself staring at Marcus when he was reading or working on his laptop. She noticed small details about him, like the way he rubbed his forehead when he was tired or how his eyes crinkled when he laughed at something genuinely funny. These observations felt too intimate for a business partnership. Marcus struggled with feelings he had never experienced before in his carefully controlled life. He looked forward to coming home to Emma each evening. He worried about her when she was out running errands. He felt proud when other people complimented her intelligence or kindness. These emotions were foreign and confusing for someone who had always kept his heart locked away from others. They both became careful not to cross the invisible line they had established on their wedding day. but the lines seemed to blur a little more each day as they shared meals and conversations and quiet moments in their apartment. Sometimes their hands would brush while reaching for the same object and both would feel electricity shoot through their bodies. Sometimes they would catch each other staring and quickly look away with embarrassed smiles. Emma started having dreams about Marcus that felt too real and intimate. She would wake up feeling confused and guilty about her changing feelings toward him. She reminded herself that this was temporary and that Marcus was paying her to play a role, but her heart seemed to have forgotten that their marriage was just an elaborate performance for his father and friends. Marcus found himself making excuses to spend more time with Emma. He would suggest they practice their public displays of affection or attend extra social events together. He told himself he was just being thorough about maintaining their cover story, but the truth was that he simply enjoyed being near her and seeing her smile at him like he was someone special. The 6-month mark of their marriage was approaching and neither of them wanted to think about what would happen when their contract ended. They had both fulfilled their parts of the agreement successfully. Marcus's father believed their marriage was real and loving. Emma had enough money to care for her grandmother and start her bakery, but the idea of returning to their separate lives felt wrong somehow. Late one evening as they sat together on the couch watching a movie, Emma fell asleep with her head on Marcus's shoulder. He should have woken her up and sent her to her own bedroom. Instead, he stayed perfectly still for hours just watching her sleep peacefully against him. Her breathing was soft and steady and she looked completely trusting and vulnerable. Marcus realized with a shock that he never wanted this moment to end. When Emma woke up the next morning, she was covered with a blanket and Marcus was gone. She found a note saying he had left early for a business trip but would be back in 3 days. The apartment felt empty and lonely without him there. Emma spent those 3 days missing him more than she had any right to miss a man who was only her temporary husband. Something was changing between them whether they wanted it to or not. The turning point came on a rainy Thursday evening when Marcus arrived home to find Emma in the kitchen surrounded by flour and tears. She had been trying to perfect a new recipe for her future bakery, but everything had gone wrong. The cookies were burnt, the mixing bowls were overflowing and flour covered every surface including Emma's hair and clothes. But Emma's tears were not really about the failed baking attempt. The weight of living a lie for almost a year had finally become too much for her to bear. She had fallen deeply in love with Marcus despite every promise she had made to herself to keep their relationship strictly business. The approaching end of their marriage contract filled her with dread. Instead of relief, Marcus set down his briefcase and crossed the kitchen without hesitation. He pulled Emma into his arms as naturally as breathing and held her while she sobbed against his chest. Her tears soaked through his expensive shirt, but he did not care about anything except comforting the woman he had come to love more than his own life. "I cannot do this anymore," Emma whispered through her tears. "I thought I could keep everything simple and businesslike, but I fell in love with you. I know that was not part of our deal and I know you do not feel the same way about me, but I cannot pretend anymore that this marriage means nothing to me." Marcus felt his own carefully built walls crumbling as he held Emma's trembling body. For months he had fought against his growing feelings and told himself that love was just a weakness that would interfere with his goals. But hearing Emma confess her love broke down every defense he had constructed around his heart. "Emma," he said softly, tilting her chin up so he could look into her tear-filled eyes. "What if it does not have to be pretend anymore? What if we could make this marriage real?" The kiss that followed was nothing like their formal wedding peck or the polite kisses they had shared at public events. This kiss was desperate and tender and full of months of suppressed longing. When they finally broke apart, both were trembling with emotion and relief at finally admitting what they both felt. "I love you," Marcus said, and the words felt more true than anything he had ever spoken in his life. "I think I started falling in love with you that first day in the diner when you told me I looked stressed and offered me terrible apple pie. But I was too scared and stubborn to admit it, even to myself." Emma's smile was radiant as she reached up to touch his face with gentle fingers. "I love you too," she said. "I tried so hard not to let it happen, but you made it impossible. You are nothing like the cold businessman I thought you were. You are kind and caring and you make me want to be the best version of myself." They spent that night talking until dawn about their feelings and their fears and their hopes for the future. Marcus admitted that Emma had changed him in ways he never thought possible. She had taught him that success meant nothing without someone to share it with. She had shown him that vulnerability was not weakness but rather the courage to let another person matter more than yourself. Emma told Marcus that he had given her confidence to dream bigger than she ever thought she could. He believed in her abilities and supported her goals in ways that made her feel valued and respected. She had never imagined that love could feel so safe and encouraging and empowering all at the same time. The months that followed their confession were the happiest either of them had ever experienced. Marcus involved Emma in his business decisions and valued her insights and perspectives. Her compassionate approach to problems often yielded better results than his purely analytical methods. Together, they made his company more successful and more ethical than it had ever been before. Emma's confidence blossomed under Marcus's love and encouragement. She started planning her bakery in earnest with Marcus's full support and financial backing, but more importantly, she felt worthy of her dreams for the first time in her life. Marcus treated her like an equal partner whose opinions and feelings mattered as much as his own. They renewed their wedding vows in a small ceremony with Emma's grandmother and a few close friends as witnesses. This time, Emma wore the beautiful wedding dress she had always dreamed of, and Marcus's vows were written from his heart instead of spoken by a judge. When they kissed as husband and wife for the second time, it felt like the beginning of their real life together. Marcus's father, Robert Sterling, noticed the change in his son immediately. Marcus seemed more relaxed and genuinely happy than Robert had ever seen him. The old man was pleased that his plan to force Marcus into marriage had worked better than he had dared to hope. He grew to love Emma like a daughter, and often said she was the best thing that had ever happened to his stubborn son. When Robert passed away peacefully in his sleep 11 months after Marcus and Emma's wedding, the inheritance seemed less important than it once had. Marcus had gained something far more valuable than money or business success. He had learned to love and be loved in return. At the funeral, Emma stood beside him with quiet strength, providing the comfort he needed to face his grief. The reading of Robert's will contained one final surprise that shocked everyone present. The family lawyer revealed that the old man had known about Marcus and Emma's original arrangement from the very beginning. His assistant had recognized Emma from the diner and reported back about Marcus's unusual courtship strategy. Robert had left a letter to be read after his death explaining his reasoning. "My son needed to learn that the most important things in life cannot be bought or negotiated," he had written. "I hoped that forcing him to find a wife would teach him about love, but I never imagined he would be smart enough to choose someone who would actually change his heart." Emma, the letter continued, "Thank you for loving my stubborn son and showing him the man he could become. You have given him something I never could teach him myself. The business was always going to be his, regardless of whether he married or not. But now I can rest in peace knowing he has found something far more precious than money. He has found his soulmate in his other half." Marcus and Emma were amazed to learn that Robert had seen through their deception but had allowed them to continue because he recognized that real love was growing between them. His wisdom and patience had given them the time and space they needed to discover their true feelings for each other. 5 years later, Marcus and Emma stood in the same spot where they had first confessed their love to each other. But now the kitchen was part of Emma's successful bakery, which had grown into a chain of shops across the city. Marcus had expanded his technology company internationally, but always made time to help Emma taste test new recipes and plan business strategies there. Love Story had begun as a calculated business transaction but had transformed into something neither had dared to dream was possible. They had learned that the best partnerships in life and business were built on mutual respect, shared values, and genuine care for each other's happiness and success. Emma often joked that she had married Marcus for his money but stayed for his heart. Marcus would respond that he had hired Emma to be his fake wife but fell in love with the real woman underneath. Their friends and family loved hearing the story of how a desperate scheme led to the most genuine and lasting love either of them had ever known. As they watched the sunset from their apartment balcony, Marcus and Emma reflected on how far they had traveled from that first awkward conversation in the diner. They had built a life together that was richer and more fulfilling than either had imagined possible. Love had conquered their fears and doubts and given them a future filled with endless possibilities.